Hello and welcome to Introduction to InDesign. So now we're really going to start working on using InDesign to put together our yearbook. So when you open up the document that you've downloaded, this will be your yearbook template that you'll be working on. So you first look at it, what are you seeing? First of all, in order to navigate through your different pages, there's a couple different options. This shows you all the pages that are sort of already set up. You can always delete or add new pages. This is the area you can do it. This is where sort of your master template is located, and I'll go over that later. But when you're actually looking at the screen, what does this mean? You have like this red line, you have this like purple, magenta-y line. What does this mean? Well, I have set a bleed line, and that's right here. And the bleed line means that sort of any sort of background or graphical elements will go past the edge of the page to this line on the artboard. And that is the bleed. And the reason why you would extend it to the artboard or the pasteboard is that when you are printing, many printers cut off the page and they trim the edges, and if you only go to the edge right here, you'll have a little white space when you actually be trimmed. And this will change depending on the printer specifications, which I will be finding out. All right, so this is the bleed line, and then right here, this is the margin. So the margin is sort of the area where anything you put will actually show up. You have to remember, like to this side, especially in a double spread page, this is where the inseam of the book will be. So any sort of important aspects of a photograph or parts of text needs to be within the margin. All right, so those are something important to know. Now on the sides we have the rulers. In order to change the measurement, you just go to the ruler and click to the right, and you can change the actual ruler specifications. I've had it set to inches right now. You can change it to points, picas, milliliters, centimeters, anything you so desire. All right, so those are a couple of things that are important to know. All right, so like any Adobe application, a lot of things are very similar. In order to get around, we have the zoom tool right here. You can also do the same thing, Control, Command, plus and minus. And then here is the pan tool, the hand tool. You can also press the space bar to help you get around. All right, so those are some of the basics. You'll be very familiar with some of the other aspects that are similar to the Adobe Illustrator, Adobe Photoshop. You have the toolbar and sort of the control or contextual menu right here. And on the right, you have a bunch of different panels that can be popped out, including swatches, which you'll want to set which colors we'll be using according to the theme. You can change stroke, color. Here is where the links panel, where when you place any sort of images, this is where that information will be held. It's important to remember that InDesign does not embed images, it links them. So that's why I've specified how you're going to be organizing your files, because it's really important that you keep your files organized, you know where everything is located. Layers is something we'll go over at a later time, and then pages, and this is where you can see all your pages and the pages spreads. All right, so right here you'll notice this is where it says master page, and a master page acts as a template for your documents. You can use this for elements that you want on all or most of your pages, page numbers, headers, logos, and you can also apply this to some of the pages and not all of them. All right, and whatever you put on a master template on the left will only show up on left page spreads, and whatever you put on the right will only show up on right page spreads. All right, so remember, you can add this to any or all of your pages or to none of them. All right, so say for example this is sort of a master template and I want to be adding page numbers, and I'll go over how to do that without having to change the page number on every single page. What you would do is, say you add your text box and you put your number. Say number will go here, and you've styled it here, and you're like, oh, I want it to be, this font and this big and a line to the right and yada, yada, yada. What you can do is you basically can drag it over a page, and then that will be applied to that specific template. So you'll notice now it's applied to all my templates, right? But say, for example, I don't want the number to show up on like the cover page or the inside page. How can I change that, right? So basically, what you can do is you select that page, and then you just drag over none, and then it disappears, all right? So it's a good idea to have a master page if you have elements that you want on every page, like if you're going to be using page numbering, all right? And that is a way that you can override it, is basically just select the spread and then you just drag it over. If you want to do multiple pages, you shift select. So say, for example, I wanted all these pages not to have the page number. You shift select, then you go to the menu right here, and then all you need to do is apply master to pages. So you just need to select apply master to pages, and then just say this will let you know what you're doing. You want to apply master or none, which would be to remove all the sort of templates, and then to what pages, the spread, and you press OK, and then it will be actually removed from those specific pages. So it's a really good idea to be using that for your document. All right, now we'll go over how to make sort of page numbering that changes depending on what page you're on. All right, that will be in another movie. So now that you have your document set up and you're trying to figure out what you're doing, a good idea is to be thinking about grids and margins and all that kind of stuff that you will be doing. All right. So in the window view, you can hide rulers, you can show guides, you can hide guides, you can show document grid, which might be useful, or you say, oh, I don't really like seeing that, and you turn that off. Hide document grid. All right. And then you can also add and remove or move around columns. And that's something that will be really useful if you're having a lot of text on the page. So now if you want to adjust or add guides across pages, since I haven't set any up by default, what you can do is select the page, and you'll see that it's highlighted here. And then you go up to the window up here, you go to layout, and you go to margins and columns. So let's say layout, margins, and columns. And this is where you can decide, how many columns and the margins. So you're not going to be editing the margins at all, but you can, actually change the number of columns that show up. So right now there's none, but you can add 2 or 3, and this will be helpful for when you're doing a layout that should be gridded. So you can decide how many you want, and you can change the gutter, which is sort of the space in between 2 columns. All right, and you can do this for 1 page or multiple pages. That's kind of up to you. All right, so you'll notice that you can actually select these once you add them. And something important to know is that these lines are not going to be showing up when you print. And actually, to see a print preview, you can go down to the toolbar over here. You just hold down, you can see you can do preview mode, and this is what it actually looks like when it's printed, and then we can go back to normal mode. So you can see these are merely guides for you, and they'll be helpful when you're doing layout. All right, so now that you've sort of got basic understandings, and I encourage you to go through and look at the different tools here. How do we actually add text and images? Well, one thing that's different about InDesign versus Illustrator is that you are adding things within frames. So you'll be adding frames, and then you'll be putting text or images into those frames. And you have to think about it in 2 parts, like the house and what's in the house. And you can move text and frames, images around within the frame, and you can also move the frame around itself. So you can pre-draw a frame, and you have rectangle, elliptical, polygonal tool. You can just add a frame, and you'll notice you can, when you have guides and stuff like that, it's helpful because it can snap to it. And you can add text or an image within that. And here's the text tool, and you can add it right here. Something also that you can use is type on a path, which is the same as in Illustrator, so you can add it like onto the path here. So you'll notice this is really similar. If you can play around with sort of cool things that you can do, and then you can also place an image into here. So you go File, Place. Remember, you're placing images, and you can also place text files, and it's linking and creating sort of like a thumbnail or a sketch of what's going in there, but it's not embedding it. So say, for example, I want to place this image right here, open, and it places right there. Another way is you can just File, Place, select one or multiple images, open, and they get loaded up on the cursor. And you can either just click and it'll show up the exact size, or you can draw a frame and it loads it up proportionally. Remember, you're not going to ever want to have an image sized up, because then it'll become pixelated. All right. So remember, this is an image within a frame. So the text is also within a frame. All right. So when you add text, you can do the same thing if you're going to be placing a Word file, or you can just copy and paste. Those are a couple different things that you can do. And again, you just go to a frame, or you can actually go to the type tool and sort of drag out the box that we put into the frame. All right. So that's a couple different things. Another thing to know is that when you select an object or a frame like this, you're just selecting the frame. If you actually want to select the text or the image, you have to double click. So double clicking is really important. Double clicking will allow you to go into the text, or double clicking will allow you to be able to go into and move an image around within the frame. All right. So there's a lot of options that you can think of. You can do special characters, glyphs, you can import text. You can thread frames, and this is something I went over in a previous movie. So if you have a large piece of text, you can put it in one text box and then link it to another text box. These are other things that I can also go over at a later sort of time. You can also put text on a path, which means you can sort of change the way that the text is being laid out. This is the regular selection tool. This is direct selection tool. This will allow you to change your actual frames and make them sort of funky size. So this could be something cool to be playing around with. All right. Those are sort of important things. And remember, when you're importing graphics, File, Place, or you can drag from the Finder window onto your InDesign document. And it's linking, and you go over here to the links, it is linking, and I'll show you right here, linking your files. If you click on the actual file, you can see the information here, the path, etc., etc. You can see what pages it's on, if there's a problem, like if it's been updated or it can't find it. These are different things. You can also sort this by name, if there's a problem with it, what page it's on. There's a lot that you can do. This is the links panel, all right? And you can consider it the control center for all linked graphics, all right? You can also, a good trick is if you don't know where a file is, and that's why you're kind of organizing your files, you can go select the image, go down to the menu right here, and then you can open it up in the Finder. So you can go to Edit With or Edit Original, or you can go to Reveal in Finder, which is another option that will show up here. All right, so a couple of things to go over with is when you're fitting graphics to a frame. When you're fitting graphics to a frame, you can do a lot of different things because oftentimes like this, it's not the appropriate size. The frame is not fitting the image. So how do you remedy this? You can go up here to Object, and you can go to Fitting, and you have a bunch of options here. Fill frame proportionally, fit content proportionally, fit frame to content, fit content to frame, and center content. Right? So let me just go over these quickly. Fill frame proportionally. This fills frame with image even if some of the image is cropped out. All right? Fit content proportionally means the image is scaled up in design until it fits the frame, but none of it's cropped out. So you can sort of see the difference. Whereas if you fit frame to content, I go to Object, I go fit frame to content changes the size of the frame to match the current size of the image. So you'll see now the frame exactly matches the size of the image. Whereas if you fit content to frame, this means you're scaling the image inside the frame to fit, even if it means it's disproportional, which means this would be sort of misscaled. I don't recommend you use this. Another way to find these, if you go to the control or contextual panel up here, you'll notice this is where you can do the same sort of options. You have this selected. This is where you can do different fitting options, the same thing. Another thing that's important to know is you can center the image in the frame. So say you had a frame and you're like moving it around, you can actually center it within, which might be helpful. And then there's also this option right here to auto fit. And if you select this option, every time you change the frame, it automatically updates it with the last fitting option you moved. So even if I make this frame super big, it'll always be sort of centered within that. All right.